I stood frozen in the doorway of what used to be my bedroom, my Hawaiian tan still fresh on my skin. Every trace of me had vanished, replaced by gaming monitors, microphones, and my brother Tyler smiling into a camera. My suitcase fell from my hand. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad just pointed toward the backyard shed. "Stay there or get out of the house," he said. I chose to leave that day with only what I could carry. Now 1 year later, my phone screen lights up with 33 missed calls from Mom and a single text message, "Where are you?" I stare at those 3 words and wonder if they really deserve to know. Before my Hawaii trip, I thought we were a normal, happy family. I'm Chelsea, 25 years old, and until last year, I had lived in my childhood home while working at a graphic design firm downtown. My parents always seemed supportive of my creative career. My dad would proudly show friends my website, and Mom had framed my first professional illustration in the living room. My younger brother Tyler and I had typical sibling squabbles growing up, but I thought we were close. I helped him with school projects, and he fixed my computer whenever it crashed. When I landed a promotion to senior designer, I decided to treat myself to a solo vacation in Hawaii. It was the first real vacation I'd taken since college graduation. I saved for 6 months to afford that 1 week in paradise. Before leaving, I helped Mom reorganize the pantry, mowed the lawn for Dad, and even cleaned my room thoroughly so it would be nice when I returned. Tyler promised to water my plants while I was gone. The week in Maui was everything I dreamed it would be. I hiked volcanic trails, swam in crystal clear water, and watched the sunset from black sand beaches. I sent my family daily photos of my adventures and bought them all souvenirs. The morning I was set to fly home, I called my parents to let them know my arrival time. "Hey, sweetie," Mom answered, her voice sounding strained. "How was the trip?" "Amazing, I can't wait to tell you all about it." "My flight lands at 4, so I should be home by 6. Can we do family dinner tonight?" There was a pause, then muffled voices, as if she'd covered the phone to speak to someone else. "Actually, your father and I might be out when you get back," she said. "Just let yourself in. We'll catch up tomorrow." Something in her tone felt off, but I brushed it aside, assuming they had plans they couldn't break. My flight landed on time, and I took a ride-share home, excited to sleep in my own bed after a week of adventures. The house looked the same from the outside my childhood home, with its blue shutters and the oak tree I used to climb. I noticed extra cables running along the side of the house, but didn't think much of it. I unlocked the front door, calling out as I entered. "Hello, I'm home." The living room lights were on, and I could hear voices coming from upstairs. My parents were home after all. I smiled, thinking they might have planned a surprise welcome. Dragging my suitcase up the stairs, I followed the sound to my bedroom door, which was closed. Music and my brother's voice filtered through. When I opened the door, my world shattered. My bedroom had been completely transformed. The walls, once covered with my artwork and photography, now displayed gaming posters and LED strip lights. My desk where I did freelance design work had been replaced by a massive gaming station with 3 monitors. My bed was gone, and in its place stood a green screen setup. And there, in the center of it all, sat Tyler with headphones on, speaking animatedly to a camera. "What the hell is this?" I gasped. Tyler jumped, then gave an awkward laugh. "Hey guys, that's my sister. I'll be right back." He muted his microphone and turned to me. "Surprise! Welcome home. Where's my stuff? Where's my room?" My voice rose with each question. Tyler pointed to some boxes stacked in the corner. "Most of your things are in there." Mom and Dad moved the rest to the shed. "The shed? What are you talking about?" That's when my parents appeared in the doorway behind me. My mother's face was tight with tension, and my father looked defensive before I'd even spoken to him. "Mom, Dad, what's going on?" My father cleared his throat. "Your brother's gaming channel is taking off. He needs a proper studio space. So you gave him my room." Without even asking me, I looked between them, waiting for someone to say this was a horrible joke. "You have a job, Chelsea," my father continued. "You can afford your own place. Tyler needs our support right now. He's got real potential here." The way he emphasized real cut through me like a knife, as if my career, which I'd worked so hard for, wasn't real or valuable. "We fixed up the shed for you," my mother added quickly. "It has electricity now, and we put a cot out there." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me to sleep in the backyard shed in February. We put a space heater out there, Tyler offered, as if that made everything okay. I stormed past my parents and ran to the backyard. The shed was a small wooden structure where my dad kept gardening tools. Opening the door, I found they'd cleared a small space among the lawnmower and rakes. There was indeed a cot squeezed into the corner with my comforter thrown over it. A small space heater sat on the dirt floor connected to an extension cord running back to the house. The walls were uninsulated, and I could feel the February chill seeping through the cracks. My parents had followed me outside. My mother, at least, had the decency to look embarrassed. "This is temporary," she said quietly, "until you find your own place." "This is insane. You can't just throw me out of my room without warning." "We're not throwing you out," my father snapped. "We're giving you options. You can stay in the shed until you find an apartment, or you can leave. But Tyler needs that room now. He's got sponsors interested, Chelsea. This could be big for him." "What about my things, my portfolio, my artwork?" My mind raced through all the irreplaceable items that had been in my room. My parents exchanged a look that sent a chill through me. "We had to make some space decisions," my father said carefully. I pushed past them and ran back to my former bedroom, going straight for the boxes in the corner. Frantically digging through them, I found some clothes books and random keepsakes. But my art supplies, my professional portfolio, and many of my personal belongings were nowhere to be seen. "Where's the rest of my stuff?" I demanded. Tyler wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother started fussing with the window blind. "We had to sell some things," my father finally admitted. Tyler's equipment was expensive. The truth hit me like a physical blow. "You sold my things to buy his gaming stuff." "Just some old art supplies and those portfolios taking up space," he said defensively. "You can always print new copies of your work, right?" I couldn't speak. Those portfolios contained original artwork, sketches, and designs from my entire career and college years. Irreplaceable. And they'd sold them without a second thought. "This is my livelihood," I whispered. "Those were my professional materials. And this is Tyler's livelihood now," my father gestured to the streaming setup. "He's already making more in tips and subscriptions than you do in a week at that design job." The casual cruelty of his comparison broke something inside me. I looked around at the room that had been mine since childhood, now transformed for my brother's hobby-turned-business. At my parents, who couldn't even look me in the eye. At my brother, who sat there in his expensive gaming chair purchased with the proceeds from my stolen artwork. I made my decision in that moment. I'm leaving. "Chelsea, don't be dramatic," my mother started. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being realistic. You've made your choice very clear." I returned to the boxes, grabbing only what was truly mine, what they hadn't already sold off. "You can't just leave," my father said, his voice losing some of its certainty. "Actually, I can. And unlike you, I'm taking only what belongs to me." I repacked my suitcase with whatever clothes remained, grabbed my laptop and the few personal items I could find. As I walked toward the front door, my parents trailed behind me, suddenly realizing I was serious. "Where will you go?" my mother asked, panic edging into her voice. "That's not your concern anymore." I walked out without looking back, the weight of betrayal heavier than the suitcase in my hand. The neon vacancy sign of the West Side Motel buzzed and flickered as I checked in for the night. The clerk barely looked at me as he passed over a key attached to a plastic number 4. My room smelled of cigarettes and cheap air freshener, but it had a lock on the door and a bed that wasn't in my parents' backyard shed. Sitting on the edge of the sagging mattress, I finally let the tears come. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would help without judgment. "Amanda, it's Chelsea. I need a place to stay." My best friend since high school, Amanda, didn't ask questions over the phone. She simply gave me her address and told me to come right over. 30 minutes later, I was sitting on her couch with a mug of hot tea, telling her everything. They did what Amanda's face twisted with indignation. They turned your bedroom into a gaming room for Tyler and expected you to live in a shed. I nodded, too exhausted to repeat the details. "They sold my portfolio, Amanda. Years of original work just gone." "That's theft," she said firmly. "Those were your professional materials." According to my dad, Tyler's streaming career is more valuable than my little design job. His words. Amanda's one-bedroom apartment was tiny, but she insisted I stay as long as I needed. That night, I slept on her pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling and wondering how my family could have betrayed me so completely. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face people yet, couldn't explain what had happened without breaking down. Amanda left for her nursing shift, and I spent the day in a daze trying to inventory what I'd lost and what I still had. When I opened my suitcase to unpack what little I'd brought, reality hit me again. My jewelry box with my grandmother's pearl earrings was missing. The hand-bound sketchbook my college mentor had given me was gone. Even the stuffed rabbit I'd had since childhood had been left behind or sold. These weren't just possessions. They were pieces of my history, my identity. For 3 days, I barely left Amanda's apartment. She brought home takeout and watched bad reality TV with me, letting me process my grief. On the 4th day, she gently suggested I needed to tell my boss what happened. "You need your job, Chels, and you need to explain why you've been out." She was right. That afternoon, I called my supervisor, Melissa, and gave her a condensed version of events. "I'm essentially homeless right now. I finished hating how the words sounded." Melissa was surprisingly understanding. "Take the rest of the week, Chelsea. Sort out your living situation and we'll see you Monday. If you need an advance on your next paycheck, let HR know." With that immediate concern addressed, I turned to the next problem, finding affordable housing. Amanda's place was too small for 2 people long-term, and rentals in our city were notoriously expensive. I spent hours scrolling through listings, each one more depressing than the last. Studios were going for more than half my monthly salary, and most wanted first and last month's rent, plus a security deposit up front. "What about Jessica, from Accounting Amanda?" suggested one evening. "Didn't she move in with her boyfriend? Maybe she's looking for someone to take over her lease." It was worth a shot. Jessica's apartment was a 20-minute walk from the design firm, and while small, it had been just right for one person. I called her that night, hope fluttering in my chest. "I'm so sorry, Chelsea," Jessica said. "The landlord already found a new tenant. But I know this lady Diane. She owns a small building on Maple Street. Sometimes she has units that never hit the main listings. Let me text you her number." Diane turned out to be a silver-haired woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. We met at her 4-unit building the following afternoon. The available studio apartment was on the ground floor, barely 400 square feet, but it was clean and had its own tiny bathroom and kitchenette. "Rent's $900 a month, utilities included," Diane said. "But I could use help with some property management. Minor repairs, collecting rent, keeping an eye on things when I visit my sister in Florida. If you're interested in that, I could knock it down to $750. It was still a stretch on my budget, but just manageable, and it was mine. "When can I move in?" "Got furniture?" Diane asked. I shook my head. "Just clothes and personal items right now." Diane considered this. "Previous tenant left a bed frame and dresser. They're nothing fancy, but you're welcome to them. And I've got a table and chairs in storage you can use." By the weekend, I had moved what little I owned into the studio. Amanda helped me pick up some necessities from discount stores and coworkers, surprised me with housewarming gifts, a coffee maker from Melissa, and a set of dishes from the creative team. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My parents called and texted constantly that first week. I ignored them all. What could they possibly say to justify what they'd done? When my mother left a voicemail saying they'd saved some of your less important things, I blocked their numbers. 2 weeks into my new life, I was scrolling through social media on my lunch break when I saw it. Tyler had posted new merchandise for his gaming channel, and the logo looked eerily familiar. It was a stylized version of a design I'd created for a college project. I kept scrolling and felt my stomach drop. His streaming background, the banners on his page, even the emotes his subscribers could use, all incorporated elements of my work. Not only had my family kicked me out and sold my original portfolios, but my brother was now profiting from my designs, using my creativity to build his brand without credit or compensation. The final betrayal. I showed the post to Melissa, who frowned deeply. "That's your work. I remember that design language from your portfolio when we hired you. What can I do? I don't have money for a lawyer." She thought for a moment. "Document everything. Screenshots, dates of your original work, anything you have. This isn't just a family matter anymore, Chelsea. This is intellectual property theft." That night, I created a folder of evidence comparing Tyler's merchandise with my original designs. The similarities were undeniable, but the thought of legal action against my own family left me nauseous and conflicted. I saved the folder, but couldn't bring myself to do anything with it yet. First, I needed to rebuild my life. 6 months passed, in a blur of adaptation and small victories. My tiny studio apartment slowly transformed into a home. I found a second-hand armchair at a yard sale that fit perfectly in the corner by the window. Diane showed me how to patch the crack in the bathroom wall. I hung string lights around the perimeter of the ceiling, creating a warm glow that made the space feel cozy rather than cramped. Diane and I developed an unexpected friendship. Twice a week, we had coffee in her unit upstairs, where she shared stories about her 40 years as a school librarian. When her arthritis flared up, I handled maintenance requests from the other tenants. When I mentioned missing my art supplies, she brought me a box of watercolors her late husband had never used. "No sense letting them gather dust," she said. "Make something beautiful." At work, I threw myself into every project, staying late and volunteering for the challenging assignments no one else wanted. Melissa noticed. "You're doing exceptional work, Chelsea," she told me during my performance review, "but I'm concerned you're burning yourself out. This isn't just about proving your worth to the company, is it?" Her perceptiveness caught me off guard. The truth was, I was trying to rebuild my professional portfolio from scratch, replacing what had been sold without my consent. But underneath that practical goal was a deeper need to prove my father wrong, to show that my little design job had real value and meaning. After that conversation, I finally made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Marshall had an office just 3 blocks from my apartment, and my insurance covered most of the cost. Our first session was awkward, with me struggling to explain how my parents had essentially chosen my brother over me. "It sounds like you're still in shock," Dr. Marshall observed. "That's a normal response to such a profound betrayal from the people who should have protected you most." Over weekly sessions, we unpacked the complicated grief I felt, not just for my lost possessions, but for the family relationships I'd thought were solid. Dr. Marshall helped me see that my parents' behavior reflected their issues, not my worth. Blocking their numbers was a healthy boundary, she assured me. "You get to decide when or if you're ready for contact." Despite my efforts to move forward, Tyler's streaming channel followed me like a shadow. His subscriber count grew, and I occasionally saw his merchandise around town, my designs walking past me on strangers' t-shirts. Each sighting was a fresh paper cut on a wound that refused to heal. One evening, after seeing a group of teenagers wearing my brother's logo at the grocery store, I came home and made the decision to block his social media accounts too. It was the digital equivalent of cutting the last threads connecting us. I cried that night, mourning not just what had happened, but what would never be again. The next morning, I woke to a text from an unknown number. "It's Tyler. Mom and Dad don't know I'm texting you. Can we talk?" I stared at the message until my screen went dark, then deleted it without responding. Whatever he wanted to say, I wasn't ready to hear it. As summer turned to fall, I developed new routines and connections. Every Sunday, I met Amanda for brunch at a cafe halfway between our apartments. I joined a community garden in the neighborhood, tending a small plot of herbs and flowers. The other tenants in Diane's building, a young couple on the 2nd floor and a retired teacher on the 3rd, became friendly faces who stopped to chat when we crossed paths. Then there was Jack, the law student, who moved into the 4th unit in August. He was 28, with glasses that kept sliding down his nose and an impressive collection of true crime books. We first spoke when I helped him carry boxes up to his apartment, and soon fell into the habit of sharing takeout on Friday nights, watching documentaries on his laptop. "So you're our building manager?" he asked one evening, passing me a carton of pad thai. "Unofficial assistant manager," I corrected. "Diane's the real boss. I just help out for a rent discount." "Smart arrangement," he nodded. "I'm drowning in student loans, so I appreciate creative economics." Jack was easy to talk to, never pushing for more information than I offered. When I finally told him about my family situation, he listened without interruption, then said simply, "They were wrong and you deserved better." It was the straightforward validation I hadn't realized I needed. October arrived with crisp air and falling leaves. I was decorating my apartment with small pumpkins when the building's mail carrier knocked on my door. "Package for you," she said, handing me a bubble mailer with no return address. Inside was a bundle wrapped in tissue paper. As I peeled back the layers, tears sprang to my eyes. My childhood journals from ages 8 through 16, a stack of photographs from family vacations and school events, a small wooden box containing the pearl earrings my grandmother had given me for my 16th birthday, and at the bottom a note written in shaky handwriting. They don't know I sent these. I saved what I could. Love, Grandma. I clutched the treasures to my chest, overwhelmed by this unexpected lifeline to my past. My grandmother had always been quietly supportive of my creative pursuits. When I was 10, she'd bought me my first set of professional colored pencils. When I won a school art contest at 12, she'd framed my drawing and hung it in her living room. And now, she'd risked my parents' anger to return these precious pieces of my history. That night, I carefully arranged the salvaged mementos in my apartment. The pearl earrings went on my dresser. The photos found homes in inexpensive frames on my walls. The journals I stored in my nightstand, not quite ready to revisit the innocent thoughts of my younger self. For the first time since that February day when I'd returned from Hawaii to find my life upended, I felt a sense of continuity between my past and present. My grandmother's act of kindness was a reminder that while some family bonds had broken, others remained strong. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. It was time to stop running from the theft of my creative work. Time to stand up for myself. I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder of evidence I'd been collecting. I'm ready. I texted Melissa. What's the next step? The law office smelled of leather and lemon polish. I sat across from Patricia Winters, an attorney specializing in intellectual property, watching as she flipped through my evidence folder. Jack sat beside me, having offered both moral support and insight from his legal studies. These comparisons are compelling, Patricia said finally. The design elements are clearly derivative of your original work. You say your brother is profiting from merchandise using these designs. I nodded. His channel has over 200,000 subscribers now. He sells t-shirts, hoodies, mouse pads, all with variations of my artwork. And you never gave permission for use of your designs. No verbal agreement, no licensing arrangement. Absolutely not. He took them without asking when my parents sold my portfolio. Patricia leaned back in her chair. We have a strong case for copyright infringement, Miss Wilson. The first step would be sending a cease and desist letter demanding he stop using your designs and provide an accounting of profits derived from them. The thought of taking legal action against my family still made my stomach twist, but I remembered Dr. Marshall's words from our last session. Standing up for yourself isn't vindictive. It's necessary for healing. What do I need to do? I asked. 3 days later, I approved the final draft of the cease and desist letter. Patricia would send it to Tyler's business email, the one listed for merchandise inquiries on his streaming channel. I felt a strange mix of anxiety and empowerment as I signed the authorization. Jack squeezed my hand as we left the law office. You're doing the right thing, Chelsea. Then why do I feel so terrible? Because you're a good person who never wanted to be in this position, he said simply. But they put you here. I threw myself into work while waiting for Tyler's response. Melissa had assigned me to lead a rebranding project for a local coffee chain, and the creative challenge was a welcome distraction. My small team was finalizing logo options when Amanda called. Chels, you need to check Tyler's stream. Right now. I blocked all his accounts, remember? Trust me. This is important. I excused myself to the break room and used Amanda's login to access my brother's channel. He was live facing the camera with a paper in his hand that I recognized as the cease and desist letter. So my sister thinks she can lawyer up and threaten me, he was saying to his audience. After abandoning our family and ghosting us for months. Real classy Chelsea. My hands started shaking as he continued. She claims I stole her precious designs. What she doesn't mention is how she left Mom and Dad hanging, not contributing to household expenses, while she saved for her fancy vacation. Someone had to step up and help with the mortgage. The lies poured out of him, painting me as selfish and ungrateful. He twisted every detail of what had happened, claiming I'd overreacted to a reasonable request to share space, and had thrown a tantrum when asked to temporarily stay in the converted shed. But the worst was yet to come. And now she's trying to sabotage my career because she's jealous of my success. Well, here's what I think of her legal threats. He held the letter up to the camera, then slowly tore it in half. I watched in horror as thousands of viewer comments scrolled by most supporting Tyler and condemning me. Within minutes, my social media notifications exploded as Tyler's fans found my professional accounts leaving negative comments and one-star reviews. Melissa found me still frozen in the break room. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I wordlessly turned my phone to show her the flood of harassment. Her expression hardened. "Conference room now." She gathered the creative team and explained the situation in clipped professional terms. One of our designers is experiencing targeted online harassment related to her intellectual property. I need everyone to document and report any abusive comments on our company pages. IT will be strengthening our security protocols. Looking directly at me, she added. "And Chelsea, we stand with you. The company will be supporting your legal action as a matter of principle. We don't tolerate theft of creative work, period." Her public support in front of the team left me speechless. I'd been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't fully appreciated what I'd gained: colleagues who valued me and my work. That evening, as the online harassment continued, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Chelsea, it's Grandma." "Grandma." The relief in my voice was palpable. "Thank you for the package. You have no idea how much it meant to me." "I should have done more," she said, her voice low. "I'm calling from the grocery store payphone. Your parents don't know." A chill ran through me. "Is everything okay?" "They've been lying to the family, Chelsea. Telling everyone you moved out suddenly for a job opportunity and barely stay in touch. I didn't know the truth until I overheard your father talking about selling your things." My grandmother's words confirmed what I'd suspected, but hadn't wanted to believe my parents were rewriting the narrative, making themselves the victims of my abandonment rather than the perpetrators of my exile. "Tyler's fans are harassing me online," I told her. "He's making up stories about me." "That boy," she sighed. "He was always your father's favorite, but I never thought it would come to this. Listen, I can't talk long, but you should know they've got a big gaming company sponsoring Tyler now. Some tournament thing. They're acting like he's going to be a millionaire." After we said goodbye, I searched for information about Tyler's sponsorship. It didn't take long to find the announcement Gamer Elite, a major peripherals manufacturer, had signed Tyler as a brand ambassador for their new line of streaming equipment. The promotional materials featured their products alongside merchandise displaying my design elements. The next morning, I forwarded the sponsorship announcement to Patricia. Her response was immediate. "This escalates matters. They're involving a third party in the infringement. I'll reach out to Gamer Elite's legal department directly." 2 days later, my grandmother called again, this time from a friend's house. "Your mother showed up at my door in tears," she reported. "Apparently, Tyler's big sponsor received some legal letter and they're reviewing their relationship with him. Your father blames you, of course." I felt a twinge of satisfaction, followed by a wave of exhaustion. "I never wanted this fight, Grandma." "I know, dear, but sometimes the fight comes to you whether you want it or not." That evening, as Jack and I were having dinner in my apartment, a commotion in the hallway drew our attention. I opened my door to find my mother standing there, her face blotchy from crying. "Finally," she exclaimed when she saw me. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Jack stepped forward protectively. "How did you find this address?" "I went to her workplace. They wouldn't tell me anything, but I followed one of her coworkers here." The casual admission of stalking showed how far beyond normal boundaries she'd gone. "You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking. "Not until you call off your lawyers. They're destroying our family. Chelsea, Tyler's sponsor, is threatening to drop him because of you." Her voice rose with each word until she was shouting in the hallway. Doors opened as other tenants peered out to see what was happening. "Mrs. Wilson," Jack said calmly, "you're trespassing right now. Either leave voluntarily or we'll call the police." "Who are you to threaten me? I'm her mother." "No," I said quietly. "A mother doesn't sell her daughter's possessions. A mother doesn't make her child sleep in a shed. A mother doesn't choose one child over another." Security guard Hector from the building next door, who was friends with Diane, appeared at the end of the hallway. "Everything okay here, Chelsea?" "This woman was just leaving," Jack answered. My mother's face contorted with rage and desperation. "Family loyalty means nothing to you, does it? After everything we've done?" As Hector escorted her out, her parting words echoed down the hallway. "Your father was right about you. You were always selfish." I collapsed against Jack, trembling from the confrontation. He guided me back into my apartment, and made tea while I called Dr. Marshall's emergency line. That night in an emergency therapy session, I finally broke through the wall I'd built around my emotions. The worst part, I sobbed, is that I still love them. After everything they did, some part of me still wants them to love me back. That's not weakness, Dr. Marshall assured me. It's humanity. We're hardwired to seek connection with our parents even when they hurt us. The challenge is accepting that reality while still protecting yourself. The next day, my grandmother called with news. Your parents mortgaged the house to invest in Tyler's gaming career. They bought all that expensive equipment, flew him to conventions, hired a manager. Now with the sponsorship in jeopardy, they're panicking about making the payments. The pieces finally clicked into place. My parents' desperate push for Tyler's success, their willingness to sacrifice my room and sell my possessions, their rage at my legal action, all stemmed from a financial gamble they couldn't afford to lose. They bet everything on him, I murmured. Your father always thought Tyler would be his ticket to early retirement, my grandmother confirmed. When Tyler showed interest in this streaming business, your father saw dollar signs. Patricia called that afternoon with an update. Gamer Elite wants a meeting. They've requested mediation between all parties, including your parents and brother. They don't want public litigation that could damage their brand. What does that mean for my case? It's actually positive. They're taking the infringement seriously, and mediation gives us leverage without the expense of a full trial. As I prepared for the mediation scheduled for the following week, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I was steering my own fate rather than reacting to my family's choices. Whatever happened in that meeting room, I would face it on my terms. The conference room at Gamer Elite's regional headquarters felt more like a courtroom than a meeting space. One long table dominated the center with the company's legal team on one side and empty chairs waiting on the other. Patricia and I arrived first, arranging my evidence portfolio and preparing our talking points. Remember, she advised, quietly stay focused on the legal issues. This is about intellectual property rights, not family grievances. When my parents and Tyler entered, flanked by their own attorney, the air seemed to compress with tension. My father's face was set in stone, my mother's eyes were red-rimmed, and Tyler looked both defiant and scared. None of them met my gaze directly. The mediator, a silver-haired woman named Judge Reynolds, introduced herself. I'm a retired family court judge who now specializes in intellectual property disputes. My role is to help all parties reach an agreement without proceeding to litigation. She outlined the ground rules, then invited Patricia to present our case. With clinical precision, my attorney laid out the evidence of copyright infringement, displaying side-by-side comparisons of my original designs and Tyler's merchandise. Miss Wilson created these designs as part of her professional portfolio. They were her intellectual property sold without her consent and subsequently used for commercial purposes without attribution or compensation. Tyler's attorney countered with arguments about family-shared creative environments and implied consent, claiming I had allowed my brother to use my designs through years of helping with his projects. The argument was flimsy at best, and Judge Reynolds' expression showed she wasn't buying it. When the Gamer Elite representative spoke, his message was clear. Our company takes intellectual property rights very seriously. We cannot maintain a partnership with any content creator using uncleared or contested designs. During a brief recess, Patricia and I stepped into a small breakout room to confer. They're desperate, she observed. The sponsorship is clearly significant to them financially. My grandmother says they mortgaged their house to invest in Tyler's career, I shared. Patricia's eyes widened slightly. That explains the aggression. This isn't just about your designs for them, it's about staying afloat. When we reconvened, Judge Reynolds asked if any party wished to speak personally before settlement discussions began. To my surprise, my father raised his hand. This whole thing has been blown out of proportion, he began, his voice tight. Chelsea abandoned our family without warning. We supported her for years while she pursued her art hobby. When Tyler showed real business potential, we made a family decision to repurpose resources. Mr. Wilson, the judge, interrupted, characterizing your daughter's professional design work as a hobby while elevating your son's streaming as real business is precisely the kind of gender bias that has no place in this discussion. Please stick to relevant facts. My father's face flushed red, but before he could respond, Tyler stood up. I want to speak to my sister directly, he announced. Judge Reynolds looked to me. Miss Wilson, are you comfortable with this? I nodded, curious, despite myself. Tyler turned to face me for the first time. Chelsea, I never meant for things to go this way. When Mom and Dad suggested converting your room, I thought you'd be angry, but get over it. I didn't know they were going to put you in the shed, and I didn't know they sold your portfolios until after you left. That doesn't explain why you used my designs, I replied evenly. He had the grace to look ashamed. I needed professional-looking graphics for the channel. Your designs were good, and they were just sitting in those folders Mom and Dad gave me. I didn't think you'd care since you had digital copies anyway. I didn't have backups of everything I said. And even if I did, those were my designs. My intellectual property. I know that now, he admitted. But everything happened so fast. The channel took off, I got subscribers, the merchandise started selling. Dad kept pushing me to go bigger, invest more. Before I knew it, we were in too deep to back out. My mother broke in tears streaming down her face. Please, Chelsea, we can work this out as a family. If Tyler's sponsorship falls through, we could lose the house. The mediator called for another recess as emotions ran high. In the hallway outside, Patricia was blunt. They're facing financial consequences for their actions, but that's not your responsibility. We should focus on securing proper compensation for your work and ensuring they stop using your designs immediately. I leaned against the wall, torn between lingering familial obligation and the clear need to protect myself. What would a fair settlement look like? Financial compensation for past use, public credit for your designs, and immediate cessation of all infringing merchandise, plus a formal agreement about future use of any of your creative work. When we returned to the conference room, I noticed my father in intense discussion with their lawyer, his expression growing more desperate by the minute. The attorney kept shaking his head, which seemed to enrage my father further. Judge Reynolds called the session back to order. Has anyone had a chance to consider settlement terms? Before Patricia could speak, my father stood up. This is ridiculous. We're her parents. We supported her for years. Those designs were created under our roof, using supplies we paid for. James, their attorney, cautioned, that's not how copyright works. I don't care. My father exploded. This ungrateful girl is trying to destroy everything we've built for Tyler. After all we've done for her. The mediator's gavel cracked against the table. Mr. Wilson, control yourself, or you'll be removed from these proceedings. In the tense silence that followed, my mother reached for my hand across the table. I pulled away. Chelsea, please, she whispered. We're family. Family doesn't do what you did to me, I replied, keeping my voice steady. You chose Tyler over me. You sold my things. You expected me to live in a shed while he took my room. And now you're asking me to sacrifice again to save you from the consequences of your choices. Tyler looked between us, then stood up. This is insane. Mom, Dad, stop. Chelsea's right. My parents stared at him in shock. I should have stood up for her from the beginning, he continued. She's my sister, and what we did was wrong. All of it. Taking her room, selling her stuff, using her designs without permission. He turned to the Gamer Elite representative. I'll stop using the current designs immediately, and I'll publicly credit Chelsea for her work. The mediation eventually produced a settlement agreement. Tyler would immediately stop selling merchandise with my designs and acknowledge my contribution publicly. Gamer Elite would pay me a licensing fee for past use of my work in their promotional materials, and my parents would return any remaining possessions of mine they still had. As we prepared to leave, my father approached me, his earlier rage replaced by a desperate pleading. You've won, Chelsea. Are you satisfied now that you've torn apart our family? I looked at the man who had once been my hero, now unrecognizable in his bitterness. I didn't tear apart our family, Dad. You did that when you decided Tyler was the only child worth investing in. Outside the building, Patricia shook my hand. You stood your ground admirably. The settlement terms are excellent, and you maintained your dignity throughout. As I watched my family drive away, I felt no triumph, only a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The ties that had bound us were permanently altered, but for the first time since that February day, I felt the weight of betrayal beginning to lift. The aftermath of the mediation rippled through my life in unexpected ways. The settlement money arrived in my bank account, a substantial sum that represented both compensation and a kind of validation. Tyler posted a public statement on his channel acknowledging that the designs had been created by me and announcing new original graphics for his brand going forward. What I hadn't anticipated was the backlash. Some of Tyler's fans accused me of extortion and sabotage. Others dug into my professional history, leaving negative reviews on projects I'd worked on. Melissa implemented additional security measures for the design firm's website and social media, but the digital harassment continued for weeks. "It's the price of standing up for yourself in the internet age," Amanda said one evening as we scrolled through the latest comments. "But it will fade. Something else will catch their attention eventually." She was right. By mid-November, the worst of the online storm had passed. Tyler's channel continued, though, with noticeably fewer viewers. The sponsorship with Gamer Elite had been downgraded, but not canceled entirely, contingent on his compliance with the settlement terms. My parents were another story. They left increasingly desperate voicemails on my work phone since I still had their personal numbers blocked. My father's messages oscillated between angry accusations and awkward attempts at reconciliation. My mother simply cried, begging me to come home and work things out. I deleted them all without responding. Then came the certified letter from their bank. They were indeed facing foreclosure on the house, having fallen behind on the increased mortgage payments they'd taken to fund Tyler's gaming setup and management. They were asking me to loan them money from my settlement to save their home. Dr. Marshall helped me process my complicated feelings about their request. "They're adults who made financial decisions," she reminded me, "just as you've had to be an adult and make your own decisions this past year." I sent a brief response through my attorney. I will not be providing financial assistance. December arrived with unexpected snow and a surprise visit. I was leaving work when I spotted Tyler waiting beside his car in the parking lot, shoulders hunched against the cold. "5 minutes," he said when I approached. "That's all I'm asking." We sat in a coffee shop across the street, steam from our mugs creating a barrier between us. He looked thinner than at the mediation, with dark circles under his eyes. "I moved out," he said without preamble. "Got an apartment near the community college. I've enrolled for the spring semester." "What about your channel?" "Still going, but scaled back. I'm focusing on actual gaming content now, not the personality-driven stuff Dad pushed for." He stared into his coffee. "They really messed up Chelsea, Mom and Dad. They put everything on me, and when it didn't work out like Dad's fantasy, they fell apart." "That's not your fault," I said automatically. "I know, but I was complicit. I let them treat you terribly because it benefited me." He finally met my eyes. "I'm sorry. Really sorry." His apology seemed genuine, but I wasn't ready to absolve him completely. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm trying to fix my life. And because they're selling the house, downsizing to an apartment to get out from under the mortgage. Dad's looking for full-time work again." The news of my parents' financial reversal brought no satisfaction, only a hollow acknowledgement that actions have consequences. "I hope they'll be okay," I said, meaning it despite everything. "They will be, eventually." Tyler hesitated, then added, "They don't know I'm talking to you. Dad would lose it if he knew." As Christmas approached, my tiny apartment transformed with simple decorations. A small artificial tree in the corner, paper snowflakes taped to the windows, a wreath Diane had made for each tenant's door. Jack and I exchanged gifts early before he left to visit family in Chicago, a beautiful sketchbook from him and a vintage law book from me. On Christmas Eve, I joined Amanda and her family for dinner, welcomed warmly into their traditions. As we sat around their table laden with holiday dishes, her mother raised a toast. "To found family," she said, "and to Chelsea, who has shown us all what real strength looks like." Later that night, alone in my apartment with the tree lights twinkling, my phone rang with my grandmother's number. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," she said when I answered. "Merry Christmas, Grandma. Are you at the house I pictured her in my parents' living room where she'd spent every Christmas in my memory?" "No, dear. I'm at Sunset Gardens, the assisted living place on Westbrook Avenue." Alarm shot through me. "Are you okay?" "What happened?" "Nothing dramatic. My arthritis got worse and the stairs at my house became too much. It's a nice place and I have friends here." She paused. "Your parents helped with the move." It was the right decision for everyone. We talked for nearly an hour, catching up on months of separation. She told me about her new routine, the bridge club she'd joined, the cat that belonged to the facility, and visited her room each morning. I shared stories about my apartment, my growing freelance client list, my friendships with Diane and Jack. "I'd love to see where you live now," she said wistfully. "I'll visit soon," I promised, once the holidays are over. After we hung up, I made a decision. Opening my laptop, I began researching assisted living facilities in my area, wondering if Sunset Gardens had reciprocal relationships with places nearby. The thought of having my grandmother close filled a longing I hadn't fully acknowledged. The day after Christmas, I received an unexpected email from Gamer Elite's marketing director. They were impressed with my design work and interested in commissioning original graphics for their new product line completely separate from Tyler's branding. The attached contract offered a substantial freelance fee. I forwarded the offer to Melissa, who responded immediately, "This is huge, Chelsea. A perfect addition to your growing client list. Say yes." The validation of my work, not just as something to be compensated for when stolen, but as talent actively sought out, felt like the universe balancing scales I hadn't realized were still uneven. New Year's Eve found me at a small gathering in Diane's apartment, with the building's residents, plus Amanda and a few other friends. As midnight approached, Jack handed me a glass of champagne and led me to the window overlooking the city. "Any resolutions for the new year?" he asked. I considered the question carefully. To build, rather than rebuild. I've spent a year reconstructing what was taken from me. Now I want to create something entirely new. The clock struck midnight, and cheers erupted around us. Jack leaned down and kissed me softly, a question in the gesture. I answered by kissing him back, a new beginning amid the endings. The next morning, January 1st, my phone rang just after sunrise. It was Tyler again. "Dad had a minor heart attack last night," he said, without greeting. "He's stable, but it was scary. Mom's falling apart." I sat up in bed, processing the news. "Which hospital?" "Memorial. He'll be there for a few days at least." After we hung up, I paced my apartment, wrestling with conflicted emotions. These people had betrayed and hurt me deeply. They had made it clear that I was less valuable, less worthy of support than my brother. Yet in crisis, some pull of blood and history tugged at me. Dr. Marshall had once told me, "Boundaries aren't walls. They're decisions you make repeatedly about how people can interact with you." I spent the day thinking about what boundaries I needed to maintain my hard-won peace, while acknowledging the complex reality that these flawed people were still my family by birth, if not by current connection. By evening, I had made my decision. I texted Tyler, "I'm not coming to the hospital, but I'm not indifferent either. Keep me updated." His response came quickly. "I understand. Will do." A week later, just as life was settling back into post-holiday routines, I received a package at work. Inside was a flash drive and a handwritten note from Tyler. "Found this in Dad's computer backup. Thought you should have it." That evening, I plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained hundreds of scanned images. My childhood drawings, school art projects, design sketches from high school and college. My father had digitized my artistic journey over years, without my knowledge creating an archive I never knew existed. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face at this unexpected preservation of my creative history. The same man who had sold my original works, who had dismissed my career as less valuable than Tyler's potential, had also carefully documented my artistic development since I first held a crayon. People are complex, full of contradictions, and capable of both cruelty and care, sometimes toward the same person. This archive didn't erase what my parents had done, but it complicated the narrative I'd constructed about their complete dismissal of my creativity. The next day, Tyler called to say our father had been discharged from the hospital. He's supposed to rest and reduce stress. They've accepted an offer on the house. Moving next month to an apartment complex across town. "Good," I said, not knowing what else to add. "He asked about you," Tyler said carefully. "First time since everything happened that he didn't sound angry when saying your name." It wasn't an apology, not even close. But it was a crack in the wall of hostility that had defined our relationship for nearly a year. "Tell him I'm doing well," I replied. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement, a small thread of connection maintained. That night, as January snow fell outside my window, I opened a new document on my computer and began typing. Not a design brief or work project, but the story of what had happened to me, the journey from betrayal to rebuilding. Writing it down felt like claiming ownership of a narrative that others had tried to control. As I wrote into the early hours, one truth became increasingly clear: the final chapter of this story would be written entirely on my terms. Exactly 1 year after being kicked out of my childhood home, my phone lit up with 33 missed calls from my mother and a text message that simply read, "Where are you?" I stared at my phone screen, remembering that confused, heartbroken girl who had walked away with only a suitcase. She seemed like a different person now, someone I had known long ago. I set the phone down without responding and focused instead on preparing for the day ahead. The settlement from the legal action had provided unexpected financial freedom. After careful consideration, I'd used part of it as a down payment on a small commercial space downtown, converting it into a design studio where I could meet clients and showcase my work. Melissa had been supportive of my decision to split my time between the firm and building my own client base. "You're too talented to keep your light under a bushel," she'd said. "Just don't forget us little people when you're a design superstar." The official opening of Chelsea Wilson Design was scheduled for that evening. As I walked through the space, making final adjustments to the display boards and checking the lighting on my framed work, I felt a sense of ownership that extended beyond mere property. My phone buzzed again with another text from my mother. "Please answer. It's important." After a moment's hesitation, I typed a response: "I'm preparing for my studio opening tonight. What do you need?" Her reply came instantly. "Can we talk in person, please?" I thought about Dr. Marshall's guidance on establishing healthy boundaries. Over the past year, I'd learned that maintaining boundaries wasn't about punishment, but protection. I could decide how and when to engage without closing the door entirely. "I can meet you for coffee tomorrow morning at Westside Cafe, 9 a.m., I wrote back. 30 minutes only. "We'll be there," came her response. The "we" gave me pause, but I pushed the anxiety aside to focus on final preparations for the opening. Amanda arrived early to help arrange the refreshments, followed by Jack, who hung the last few prints with careful precision. "Nervous?" he asked, noticing me adjusting the same vase of flowers for the third time. "Terrified," I admitted, but in a good way. The evening unfolded better than I could have hoped. Former clients mingled with potential new ones. My colleagues from the design firm arrived en masse, bringing a ridiculous congratulatory balloon arrangement that barely fit through the door. Diane came with homemade cookies, proudly introducing herself to everyone as Chelsea's first landlady and unofficial grandmother. Near the end of the event, as the crowd was thinning, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Tyler stood awkwardly holding a small wrapped package. "I hope it's okay that I came," he said when I approached. I saw the announcement in the local business newsletter. The sight of my brother in this space, this physical manifestation of my new life, sent conflicting emotions through me. But the past months of occasional texts and carefully neutral conversations had built a fragile bridge between us. "It's fine," I said. "Come in." He looked around at the displays, nodding appreciatively. "This is really impressive, Chels. You built all this in a year." "I had to," I replied simply. Tyler handed me the package. "It's not much, but I wanted to bring something." Inside was a framed certificate of registration from the U.S. Copyright Office, officially documenting my ownership of the designs he had once used without permission. "I filed it for you," he explained. "Paid the fees and everything. My lawyer helped with the paperwork." The gesture was unexpected and meaningful, a tangible acknowledgement of what had been taken and a step toward making amends. "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. As the last guests departed, Jack helped me lock up his hand, finding mine in the darkness. "Successful first night," he observed. "Though I noticed you checking your phone a lot. Everything okay?" I told him about the scheduled meeting with my parents the next morning. His concerned expression mirrored my own apprehension. "Want me to come with you?" he offered. "Moral support." I considered it, but shook my head. "This is something I need to do alone. But maybe be on standby." He kissed my forehead. "Always." The Westside Cafe was busy with the morning rush when I arrived. I chose a table near the window, positioned so I could see them enter, but they wouldn't immediately spot me. At precisely 9, they walked in. My mother looked older than I remembered, with new lines around her eyes and mouth. My father moved more slowly than before the heart attack having left its mark. They scanned the room anxiously until my mother's gaze landed on me, her expression, a mix of relief and trepidation. I didn't stand to greet them. Another boundary, small but significant. "Chelsea," my mother breathed as they reached the table. "You look wonderful." "Thank you," I replied, gesturing for them to sit. "How are you both?" The awkward small talk continued as we ordered coffee. My father remained mostly silent, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Finally, my mother reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "We wanted to give you this," she said, sliding it across the table. Inside was a check for the exact amount of the settlement I'd received from the mediation. I looked up, confused. "It's repayment," my father spoke for the first time. "For what we took from you." I placed the check back in the envelope. "I don't need this money. We need to give it," my mother insisted. "Not because we think it fixes anything, but because we need to acknowledge what we did." "We were wrong," my father said, the words sounding rehearsed but sincere. "About all of it. Taking your room, selling your things, choosing Tyler's potential over your actual accomplishments." I sat very still, absorbing words I'd never expected to hear. "What changed?" My father's eyes dropped to his coffee cup. "Everything. The house we stretched ourselves too thin to keep. My health. But mostly seeing what you've built on your own without any help from us." The studio opening was in the business section of the newspaper. "We're not asking for forgiveness," my mother added quickly, "or for things to go back to how they were. We just wanted you to know that we understand now how badly we hurt you." The conversation that followed was stilted and careful, all of us stepping gingerly around the emotional landmines between us. They told me about their new apartment, smaller but closer to my father's new job. I shared controlled details about my work and studio. We avoided mentioning Tyler, the settlement, or the events of the past year directly. As our agreed 30 minutes drew to a close, my mother reached for my hand across the table. I allowed the contact briefly before pulling away. "Can we see you again?" she asked. "Maybe lunch next month." I considered the question carefully. "I'm not ready for regular contact," I said honestly. "But I won't say never again." The relief on her face was painful to see. My father nodded, accepting these terms without argument. As they prepared to leave, my mother asked hesitantly, "Will you be visiting Grandma soon? She misses you." "I'm looking into assisted living facilities in this area," I told them. "I've been talking with Sunset Gardens about a transfer when a space opens up." They exchanged a look of surprise. "You'd do that for her." "Not for her," I corrected. "For us. She's the only family member who stood by me." The subtext hung in the air between us, acknowledged, but not discussed further. They left with awkward goodbyes and no hugs, another boundary respected. The following weeks brought continued growth for my design business. Gamer Elite's commission expanded into a broader contract. 2 local tech startups hired me to develop their branding. My work with the design firm reduced to part-time as my independent client list grew. Jack and I settled into a comfortable relationship, neither rushing nor holding back. He passed his bar exam and accepted a position with a small firm specializing in creative rights law, a choice influenced by witnessing my experience firsthand. My grandmother's transfer to a nearby assisted living facility was approved for spring, and I visited Sunset Gardens to help her sort through which possessions to bring. During one such visit, she showed me a journal she'd kept since I was born. "I documented all your accomplishments," she told me, turning pages, filled with pressed flowers from dance recital bouquets, ticket stubs from school art shows, and detailed accounts of milestones in my life. "I always believed in you, even when others didn't appreciate your gifts." The day my grandmother moved into her new apartment just 10 minutes from my studio felt like closing a circle that had been broken. I helped arrange her familiar furniture in the new space-hanging family photos on the walls, including several of me as a child. "No pictures of Mom and Dad?" I asked, noticing their absence. She patted my hand. "They need to earn their way back onto my walls, just like they need to earn their way back into your life. Family is more than blood, Chelsea. It's actions." My relationship with Tyler continued to evolve cautiously. He enrolled in business classes at the community college, scaled back his streaming to part-time, and occasionally sent me links to design competitions or articles he thought might interest me. Small gestures of reconnection without pressure. 1 year and 3 months after being kicked out, I hung the final piece in my first solo gallery showing. The collection, titled Reconstruction, featured digital and traditional works documenting my journey from displacement to rebuilding. The centerpiece was a mixed media installation incorporating salvaged pieces of my childhood journals transformed into something new and unexpectedly beautiful. On opening night, the gallery filled with friends and colleagues. Amanda brought her new boyfriend. Diane arrived with 3 residents from my grandmother's facility, including my grandmother herself, elegant in a new dress bought for the occasion. Melissa and the design team came in force, proudly telling anyone who would listen that they had discovered me. Jack stood quietly by my side, his presence, a steady anchor. Near the end of the evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Mom and Dad are outside the gallery. They're afraid to come in without permission. Your call. I found them standing uncertainly on the sidewalk, dressed in their best clothes, looking simultaneously hopeful and resigned. We saw the announcement in the paper, my mother explained. We don't have to stay. We just wanted to see your work. I studied them for a long moment. These people who had both shaped and shattered me, who had given me life, and then forced me to rebuild it from scratch. You can come in, I said finally. As guests, not as family. Not yet. They nodded in understanding, following me inside with appropriate distance. I watched as they moved slowly through the exhibition, taking in each piece, reading every description. My father stopped longest before a piece that incorporated fragments of designs similar to those Tyler had once used, transformed now into something wholly my own. As they prepared to leave, my mother whispered, "Thank you for allowing us to see this. It's extraordinary, Chelsea." My father simply nodded, words seemingly beyond him. Later that night, surrounded by my chosen family at the after-party in my studio, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with forgiveness and everything to do with reclaiming my power. I had built this life without them, and whether they remained part of it going forward would be entirely my decision. Jack raised his glass in a toast. To Chelsea, who taught me what real strength looks like. To chosen family, Amanda added. To second acts, my grandmother said with a knowing smile. I looked around at these people who had supported me without obligation, who had become my foundation when my original one crumbled. The journey from that Hawaiian vacation to this moment had been painful beyond measure, but it had also been transformative. 1 year and 3 months earlier, I had walked away from my childhood home with only a suitcase, believing I had lost everything. Instead, I had found myself. And that I realized as champagne glasses clinked around me was the most valuable discovery of all. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a betrayal? What helped you move forward? Comment below with your thoughts and experiences. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that they can rebuild too. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the most beautiful lives are the ones we build from scratch.